The afternoon air in Texas felt like an open oven, and the smell of hot dust slid under the door. My air conditioner had stopped humming an hour earlier, and the house began to hold the heat like a stubborn breath. I stood in the kitchen with a wet dish towel around my neck, watching the ice in my glass turn to a thin, weak puddle. If I fainted on that tile, I thought, no one would come for days. It is a strange thing to know you are alive, and to feel, in the same breath, that someone has left you to become a problem for later. In spring, the house looked like a postcard. Pale stone, a porch with 2 chairs, and a crepe myrtle that rained soft pink when the wind changed. It was our dream home, or that is how we told it. My husband Glenn liked to run his hand along the banister and say, "Hardwood, it will last longer than we will," and then he would laugh. I smiled because I wanted that to be true. We had married late in life. I was 56 and careful. He was 60 and charming. I worked part-time at the library and brought casseroles to the church potlucks. He did small contracts for people he knew, and he told stories that made even stubborn men lean in. He had 2 adult children, Sasha and Tyler, both busy, both loud with plans. They liked the sound of themselves in a big kitchen. When we bought the house, I used money from my mother's estate. I had been the keeper of her houseplants, her quilts, and her plain way of doing things. "Write it down," she always said. If it's not written down, it gets lost. At the closing, the title agent slid papers across the table. The deed went into my living trust because the money had come from my mother. It was a simple choice then. We were joined, but the house was in my name as separate property. I explained it gently, and Glenn waved his hand. "It's our home," he said. "I don't care whose name is on a line." I wanted to believe that meant safety. The rhythm of our life was soft. Breakfast at the small table by the window. Groceries on Wednesdays with coupons folded in my purse. I watered the herbs on the back step, and Glenn measured the garage one afternoon like a boy planning a fort. We kept receipts in a shoebox. He liked to stick them in without folding, as if they were proof of movement, proof of trying. When the air got very dry, I rubbed lotion into the wood of the dining table like it was a living thing. Sasha came by with stories. "We're thinking about Europe this summer," she said one night, sipping sweet tea and scrolling her phone. "It's time. Just because you're older, it doesn't mean you don't get to live big," she pressed. "We can rent the house while we're gone," she added, and she smiled in a way that sounded like a test. Tyler nodded, already counting something that was not his. Sometimes I heard their plans. "Use the upstairs bath, it photographs well. Let's get a cleaner who is not so." Sentimental. "Mom can watch the dog, it will be good for her," and a small cold thread slid under my ribs. I brushed it away because we were family now. Family, I thought, is grace that shows up on a Tuesday. Money was a quiet wall. I did not say it out loud, but my social security went to small bills and groceries. The bigger things drew from savings and from the account Glenn managed. He liked to say, "I've got it," and sometimes I wanted to ask, "What does that mean?" I did not. When someone you love says, "I've got it," you want to let them carry it, even if you see their hands shake. There were small signs, if I am honest now. Glenn joked at a backyard supper that the house should be in everyone's name to make it fair. Sasha laughed too loudly. Tyler said, "Paperwork is just paper." I remember a breeze lifting the napkins and the dog chasing a moth against the fence. I remember thinking that greed is not always a shout. Sometimes it is a casual sentence that nobody corrects. The day they left for Europe, the sun came up like a brass plate. Glenn kissed my cheek at the door. "We'll send pictures," he said, his bag already in the car. Sasha hugged me with her arms but not her eyes. "Don't go upstairs," she said lightly. "We've staged it for photos." I smiled because questions felt like disloyalty. The dog pressed against my leg, shaking with the kind of worry that has no words. I had a follow-up appointment for a minor heart issue the next week. Nothing urgent, just a test. Glenn had said, "You can reschedule. It's a busy season at the clinic anyway." He promised to handle the online portal. I packed my record in a folder with a tab that said health, and I told myself I was being careful, not afraid. The first night, the house felt bigger. I made an omelet for one and washed my plate. I changed the thermostat to a steady number and listened to the steady hum that makes Texas summers human. In the morning, I tried to check the thermostat app and found the login had changed. The screen asked for a code I did not have. I sighed and put the phone down. That afternoon, the air shifted and the hum stopped. It was not a click. It was not a stutter. It was a full stop, and then the house began to gather the heat like a slow storm. I walked to the panel and checked the breaker. All was fine. I called the utility. Service paused for travel, the woman said. A note on the file. My name was not on the account anymore. I called Glenn. He did not pick up. I texted, AC off, help. A minute later, he replied, boarding, call tomorrow. You're okay? I stared at that small sentence. Then I called again and again. The third time, he sent a thumbs up. The dog lay on the kitchen tile, panting. I wet a towel and carried ice in a baking pan to the living room, thinking it would cool the air a little. I opened a window, and the heat that came in had weight. I sat on the floor and pressed the cold to my neck. It was there, with sweat at the back of my knees and the sound of someone else's siren far down the road, that I understood something plain. In this house, with my name in careful letters on a deed in a folder, I was alone. In that silence, I understood I was not family. I was inventory. The heat did not ease. The thermostat light stayed dark like a closed eye. I moved from one shady patch of floor to another as the sun traveled room to room. I kept a schedule like a person in a careful job, ice at the top of the hour. Wet towel every 30 minutes. Sip water every 10. When the ice was gone, I put frozen peas on my wrists and tried not to cry because crying makes the heat worse. At noon, I went to the fridge for the yogurt I loved. The door side open and cold air lifted against my face. I ate standing up and watched the light inside the fridge. It felt like hope. By evening, the cold had softened into cool, and then it gave up altogether. In the morning, there was a smell like sweet milk turned wrong. I took out what I could save and cooked eggs that had been very close to bad. I made the dog a plain bowl of rice so his stomach would not be shocked. On the second day, I gathered the last of the ice in a dish towel and held it like a baby. The dog put his head on my knee, and I whispered, "We will not be foolish." I took the folder with utilities written on it and found copies of bills from last year. Glenn's name had been added to the accounts, and mine had been removed. I checked our joint bank account online. My stomach tightened like a fist. Most of the money had been moved out, leaving a number that made my mouth go dry. The page showed tiny lines where larger ones used to be. Transfers labeled travel. I looked at the shoebox of receipts and saw stories I had not read. A receipt for a temporary storage unit I had not asked for. A receipt for a lock I had not bought. "Don't go upstairs," Sasha had said. I climbed the stairs slowly. The door to the master closet had a small new lock on it. It shone, cheap and new. The upstairs bathroom smelled like lemon and emptiness. Towels were folded for photos, and everything looked like an idea of a life rather than a life. On the third morning, I went to the clinic for my test. I wore my one light dress and carried a bottle of water and a sandwich in wax paper because I did not trust the vending machine. The waiting room was cool, blessedly dull with the hum of filtered air. The nurse put a clip on my finger and looked at me over her glasses. "Are you okay at home?" she asked, not in a dramatic way, just like a person taking inventory. "Yes," I said, and then I added, "It's very hot." She nodded and pressed my hand. "Let us know if you need help," she said softly. I nodded. I felt like a child at a teacher's desk. Back at home, the mail slot on the front door gave a small clink. I picked up a glossy postcard for a luxury rental company and a bill notice. There was also a yellow slip that said mail on hold per request. I had not requested it. I called the post office and the man said, "We have a stop on your address for 3 weeks." He gave me a number I did not recognize. "It must be your family," he said. My voice came out thinner than I wanted. "Please remove the hold," I said. He paused. "We can do that if you have ID." I drove to the post office with my dog in the passenger seat because the car still started and the AC in the car still worked and the dog looked at me like I had a plan. That evening, I made a list. Paper towels, dog food, ice, a small fan. It felt good to have clear words. At the store, I picked up each thing like it had a price in breath as well as dollars. The receipt curled warm in my hand. The total was a little more than I wanted. In the parking lot, I counted the cash I had left in my wallet. A woman in a yellow dress pushed a cart and hummed. I wanted to ask her to stand with me for a minute. I did not. Glenn sent pictures from Europe, a cathedral shadow on water, a plate of fish, his smile in front of sunlit stone. "Can you believe this?" he wrote. "Make sure the dog gets his pills," he added in a second note, as if the first had tired him. I wrote back, "Yes, he does." I did not mention the heat. I did not ask about the money. I thought if I waited, a better sentence would come to me. It did not. On the 5th day, a message from Sasha arrived. "We're thinking of listing the house for short-term stays later this summer," she typed. "Don't worry, we'll work around your routine." The sentence landed like a coin dropped in a jar. I typed, "I'm not comfortable with that," and I deleted it. I typed, "We should discuss," and I deleted it. I sent, "Okay," because I had started to understand what my mother meant. If it is not written down, it gets lost. But also, if the wrong thing is written down, it gets waved in your face. I closed my eyes and listened to the ceiling creak softly. That night the dog whined and stood by the front door. I opened it and cool night air washed over us. It smelled like cut grass in someone's laundry. We sat on the porch steps and I watched the star above our roofline. A boy on a bike rode past. "Evening," he said. "Hot," I replied. He laughed. "Always," he said. I stayed there until the chair pressed lines into my legs. Inside, I opened the shoebox again. I wrote the word "loss" on a sticky note and stuck it inside the lid. Under the receipts, there was a small key I did not know. It was taped to the bottom with clear tape, the kind Glenn used on everything. I held it in my palm. It was light and felt like it wanted to be useful. The small key fit the closet lock, but not the way I wanted. It turned half and stopped. The door gave me half an inch and then stuck. I pulled and felt the soft resist of a simple latch on the other side. It was a weak guard, and it told me the lock was more a message than a barrier. I closed the door gently and put my ear to the wood. The closet smelled like cedar and a little like Glenn's aftershave, distant and kind. Down the hall, a built-in cabinet we never used materialized in my mind the way things do when you feel around for help. I opened it. Inside stood a plastic file box with a cracked lid. A label on the front said "Home Warranty." It seemed harmless. I placed it on the bed and opened the lid. It was not harmless. It was a drawer of a life. On top lay manuals and spare screws and a zip bag of curtain hooks. Under that was a manila folder labeled "Closing Docs." My fingers went quiet as if they were listening instead of moving. I slid the papers out, one by one, the warranty deed, the files stamped by the county clerk, the title policy. The vesting language read, "Evelyn M. Carter, trustee of the Carter Family Living Trust." The date was 2 years ago. The ink was all the same calm black. My mother's name appeared in one small section, the gift letter, like a soft hand on my shoulder. I read each line as if I were learning a new language, slowly, so I would not mistake a curve for a straight. The house was in my trust. I was the trustee. No transfer had been done since. I took a breath and felt something in my chest loosen and stand up tall. Paper is not just paper. Sometimes, paper is a door that closes from your side. There was also a POA form Glenn had drafted but never executed, folded with a paper clip. It had blanks. It was not recorded. I put it aside and did not judge it. There were emails printed from the title company to me, to my old address, to my lawyer from that time, with words like separate property and vesting. I remembered sitting in that office with weak coffee, nodding at phrases I did not plan to use. "Just in case," my lawyer had said. "People are fine until they are not." I had smiled because the chair was uncomfortable and I wanted to go home. I opened my laptop and searched the county property records. My hands shook a little. There it was, the entry for our address and my name spelled correctly. There were no liens. There were no funny shapes attached to my deed. The screen light touched my face and made the room look like a stage set. The dog exhaled and let his weight go into sleep. The power balance did not flip like a table. It shifted like a couch being moved very carefully. I felt the work of it in my shoulders, but also the relief. I was not a guest. I was not inventory. I was an owner. To be a person is to understand which names belong to you and to stand inside them as if they are a room with your pictures on the wall. In the morning, I made coffee on the gas stove and drank it slowly, even though it was already hot. I took a notebook from the drawer with the rubber bands and wrote a list. Confirm title, restore utilities in my name, secure my own bank account, speak to a realtor, photograph the house without the upstairs stage, move personal items to safe storage, choose dates when no one will ring the bell. I underlined stay calm. I underlined it twice. First, the utility. I called and gave my trust documents. I am the owner, I said softly. The woman on the phone was kind. We can add you and reactivate today, she said. Do you have an email? She sent a confirmation. When the AC kicked on that afternoon, I cried a little. The cool air moved across the floor like apology and forgiveness together. I stood under a vent and let it lift the hair at my temple. Next, the bank. I went in person with my documents in a plastic sleeve. I'd like to open an account in the name of the trust, I said. The young man in a navy tie blinked and then smiled. We can do that, he said. Do you prefer paper statements? I nodded. He made a small joke about old souls and paper trails. I laughed because it helped my hands stop shaking. I moved what was left of my money into that account. It was not a large number. It was, however, mine. I breathed easier. Then, the realtor. I thought about calling someone flashy from a billboard. Instead, I knocked on my neighbor Carol's door. She opened it with a dish towel in her hand and saw my face before I spoke. Tea, she said, and pulled me inside. Do you know a good, quiet realtor? I asked when I could trust my voice. Someone who listens. Marta, she said. She helped my sister. Carol called Marta and handed me the phone. I specialize in seniors downsizing, Marta said gently. We will move at your speed. Marta came 2 days later in a linen shirt and sandals. She stood in the kitchen and touched the edge of the counter like she was saying hello. We'll start with a CMA, she said, and we'll talk about timing. She did not rush me. I showed her the deed. I said, it's in my trust. She nodded as if I had said, it is Tuesday. Good, she replied. That makes this simpler. We walked through the rooms and she took quiet notes. We'll photograph natural, she said. We won't pretend. The house has nothing to be ashamed of. When she left, I began a gentle packing. Not a panic, not an escape. I labeled a box daily, 1 memories, and 1 HIS. I wrapped Glenn's cufflinks in tissue and placed them in the HIS box. I folded Sasha's high school banner I found in a drawer and tucked it in the same. I wrote a list of each item I put in that box. Inventory is not the same as cold. It can be a promise. I drove the HIS box to a small storage unit with the receipt from last month. I rented the smallest space. I placed the box inside like setting down a thought. I locked the door and put the key on a ring with a tag. I changed the locks on the house because the owner can change locks, and I was the owner. I used a local locksmith. He came, young and polite, and asked no questions. Do you want the same finish? He asked. Yes, I said. I held the new keys in my palm and felt their edges. I did not feel like a thief. I felt like a person who had chosen to live inside her own name. I emailed Glenn a simple note. Utilities are back on. Dog is fine. I'm resting. Please enjoy your trip. I did not write about the house. I did not write about the money. He sent a picture of a bridge and then a message that said, "Miss you." The word floated in my phone like a leaf on water. It was soft and it did not hold. Marta sent the CMA. The market was strong. We could list at a fair price and expect interest. We can do showings in a 2-day window, she wrote. We'll ask for proof of funds up front. I like the sound of proof. I like the sound of window. We chose a weekend when Europe would be sleeping. She scheduled the photographer. I put fresh flowers on the dining table because this house deserved an honest picture of itself. Before the photos, I took down our wedding portrait. I wrapped it in craft paper and wrote our names on the back as if the frame might forget. I placed it in the memories box. I left the small painting my mother had made of a barn on the wall. It was mine before Glenn and would be mine after. When the photographer walked the rooms, he nodded, and his camera clicked like a quiet clock. Marta asked if I wanted to be out for showings. Yes, I said. I will take the dog to the park. At the park, I sat on a bench under a pecan tree and watched the dog watch the squirrels. A woman beside me said, "Hot day." "Always," I replied, and she laughed the way the boy had laughed on his bike. I thought, this is a real-life story, and it is happening slowly enough that my heart can keep up. I made one more call to a lawyer recommended by the library director. "Bring your trust," the receptionist said. "We'll check your boxes." At the appointment, the lawyer read quietly for a long time. "You have control," she said finally. "If you sell, the proceeds stay in the trust. If you choose to share, that is your grace, it is not your duty." She paused and looked at me the way the nurse had looked. "Are you safe?" she asked. "I am now," I said. We listed on a Thursday. By Friday night, Marta had 3 serious inquiries. On Saturday morning, we had 2 offers. One was shaky. One was clean, cash, 30-day close, no rent back, no games. Marta called me. "This is the one," she said. "You will be able to sleep." I read the terms twice, then signed. My fingers did not shake. I put the pen down and felt the house exhale. On Sunday, Glenn messaged. "Why are there boxes in the guest room?" he asked. I hesitated. The truth was ready. "I am selling the house," I wrote. "The house is titled to my trust. The sale will close in 30 days. Your personal items are stored safely. I will send you the key and an inventory." My phone stayed quiet for a full minute and then it rang. His face lit the screen, smiling from some square of old stone. I let it go to voicemail. He called again. I answered. "Evelyn," he said, breathless, like a man who had found out a train does not wait for him. "We will talk when you return," I said softly. "I will meet you in a public place. Please travel safely." He began to say my name again, louder. I took the phone from my ear and looked at it like a small animal I did not want to scare. "The documents are in order," I added. "You can review them when you are back." I hung up. My hands were steady. I went outside and watered the rosemary because the plant did not know about deeds or deadlines. The title company worked like a quiet machine. They sent me a calendar and a checklist. I checked boxes, I slept, I made simple meals. Beans with onion, toast with butter. I stopped adding every small thing to the shoebox. I began to throw away duplicates. I kept the lost sticky note inside the lid anyway. It felt honest. When Glenn returned, he texted, "Coffee?" I chose a cafe near the library. I wore a pressed blouse and the small locket my mother had given me. He arrived 10 minutes late, hands moving fast, words already climbing. "You can't," he began. I held up my palm, not as a stop sign, but as a prayer. "Paperwork is not romance, Glenn," I said. "It is a promise you can read." He sat back. "It was our dream," he said. His voice was small. "It was," I said, "but the deed is in my name. I am selling it. I will not be listing it for short-term stays. I will not be holding it while someone else makes money or plans. I will not be left to die in it." He swallowed. He looked at the window. He looked at the small cracked spot on the table. He sighed. "What do you want from me?" he asked. "Nothing," I said. "I am not asking, I am informing." I slid an envelope across the table. Inside was a printed inventory of his items in storage, the address of the unit, a key on a ring with a tag, a copy of the deed, and a cashier's check covering the last 2 joint bills and the vet visit he had promised to pay. "This is what I owe in conscience," I said. "Not in law." He opened the envelope. He looked at the key. He looked at me. "What about us?" he asked. The word us was thin. "I will consider counseling if you want to understand what happened," I said, "but I will not reconsider the sale." He nodded slowly, like learning to move on a boat. He did not shout. He did not throw anything. He folded the envelope and placed it in his bag. The closing day came like a Sunday that arrives whether you slept well or not. I signed. Funds flowed to the trust. Marta hugged me on the sidewalk. "You did a hard thing the right way," she said. "You'll breathe better now." I went home to the house for the last evening and stood in each room. I thanked the kitchen for mornings. I thanked the living room for quiet nights and cheap flowers that still looked like celebration. I sat on the porch steps with the dog and watched the sky turn the color of a peach that is almost too sweet. In the morning, I left the keys on the counter in a neat row. I locked the front door from the inside, stepped out the side door, and closed it gently. I did not look back long. A house is a body. You thank it by letting it live its next life. I found a small cottage an hour away with a fence that keeps the dog honest and a kitchen that faces the morning. It cost less than the big house by a kind margin. I bought it through the trust. I painted the front door the color of a fresh leaf. I hung the barn painting over the table. On the first night, I made soup and ate it slowly with the window open. The evening air smelled like cedar and distant rain. Sasha texted. "Are you okay?" she wrote. The words were plain. "Yes," I wrote back. "I am settled and safe. Your father has the key to his things." She sent a picture of a street with bikes in a row. "We're back next week," she said. "We can bring your mixing bowls I borrowed." I replied, "Thank you." I set my phone down. I did not wait for more. Boundaries are not walls. They are lines that say, "I start here." On Sundays now, I volunteer at the library longer than my shift. I help a boy find a book about insects. I show a woman how to print a boarding pass. I stand at the window when the rain finally comes and let the sound remind me that hard seasons end. Sometimes, I tell parts of my story to women who sit with their bags on their laps, ready to run. I tell them this is an emotional story, but it is also a real-life story, and those can be quiet. Glenn and I speak once in a room with a counselor where our words are held up to a clean light. He says, "I did not think." I say, "I nearly disappeared." We both nod. We both leave. I do not carry his part for him. I do not give him mine. Here is what I learned. Love needs paperwork when money and houses walk into the room. Love also needs kindness and boundaries and a good calendar. When a house becomes an argument, look for the sentence with your name on it. Stand inside it. Then choose the next small right thing and the next. Walk yourself back into the shade. I do not think of selling the house as revenge now. It was a correction. It was me telling the truth out loud and then taking action that matched the truth. Some people will call that a family drama. I call it a season that taught me the difference between forgiveness and access. Forgiveness is a gift I can give with a soft heart. Access is a gate I can open only when it is safe. On the last evening before fall, I sit on my little porch and shell peas into a bowl. The dog snores at my feet. The sky does its pink trick again and again. I think of my mother's words, simple and strong. Write it down. I write this, I was left in a hot house and I did not die. I read the paper with my name on it and I lived. If this story finds you at your own kitchen table with a wet towel on your neck, let it tell you something warm and clear. You are the person who names your doors. You are the person who turns the key. If this calm, real-life story spoke to you, tap like and share a comment. Subscribe for more quiet first-person stories that help us breathe and think.